Well, hello, Star Wars fans. Welcome to another edition, yes, another edition of the Clone Wars Chronicles. My name is Nick Shesky. I'm one of our regular co-hosts on the Rule the Galaxy podcast, kind of sitting in the pilot seat tonight for this Clone Wars Chronicles offshoot that falls within the family of the Rule the Galaxy podcast. If this is your first time and you're listening to the Clone Wars Chronicles, and you're going, man, what is the Clone Wars Chronicles all about? Well, I'm really glad that you asked that question. We are about all things Clone Wars, from the 2003 Tartakovsky Clone Wars all the way to the beautiful 2008, all the way up to, man, the season 7 on the Disney Plus. And we just love talking Clone Wars. So we're going to recap some stuff today, talk through some of that. But I would be remiss if I didn't do two things. One, and the first is to give a big shout out to Joe Molinaro, the godfather of Rule the Galaxy. We're just super grateful for you, and thanks for letting us get a chance to jump on and just geek out a little bit and talk Star Wars. And the second would be, I have to introduce my co-host, my fearless co-pilot tonight, Sam Caldwell. How you doing, man?
I'm good, Nick. How about yourself?
Man, I'm doing well. You do these intros and you realize, man, that's a lot of words to throw into those. So if you're still listening to us, hey, well done. You made it through the intro. You're here. Sam, how's life going, man?
Life is going good. It's the springtime crunch for school and teaching. We're getting to the end of our weird spring football season. So I'm definitely keeping busy in real life, but all things considered, I'm pretty good. Glad I get to come on here and talk about Star Wars. Definitely a highlight of my week or whatever. So, yeah, pumped for today. Glad to see you, which is good. But all things considered, things are going well.
Yeah, that's so good to hear, man. Hey, I got to give a quick shout out real quick. This last week, I celebrated a birthday, had a chance to go around the sun one more time, right? And what has been awesome, I said this on a previous podcast, is since we started doing the podcast, and my love for Star Wars has become a little bit more publicized, if you will, the amount of Star Wars gifts that I received on my birthday is awesome. And things that like you didn't think you knew that you needed, but then turns out that they have them in a Star Wars edition. So like my parents, right, went to, this is going to sound weird, I'll preface it with that, went to Williams-Sonoma. You know what I'm talking about? The cookware.
Oh, yeah.
Like, you could say high-end cookware. I don't know if it's high-end cookware, whatever kind of thing. And they found a grilling apron that is Darth Vader's like robotic suit. And so you put it on. It is the most dad thing that I own up to this point, and I'm very happy about it. But one of the things that I got that I'm actually really excited about, you have to give a shout out to Gwen Kennedy, who's one of our listeners. She also works at the church with me and my wife, Abby. She is a listener of the Star Wars, or of the Rule of the Galaxy podcast. She's a really good friend, loves Star Wars as well. But for my birthday, picked me up a copy of The Force Collector, which is a book that I've not read yet. It's one of the few that I haven't read from the Rise of Skywalker, or Journey to the Rise of Skywalker. And I'm very, very excited to read it. Force Collector by Kevin Shinnick. I think I said that right. If I didn't, Kevin, you can come fight me and we'll get that all squared away. But Gwen, thank you for the book. Very, very excited and looking forward to having a physical book, Sam. I don't know when the last time that I actually picked up a physical hard back book, and actually read it. Actually, I do remember, and it's actually a good reminder. I have an overdue library book that I have to take back. It just shows you how quick I get through real physical books. So
That's
you
right.
said it before. Nice to have something tangible in your hand that you can hold and touch and
That's right.
kind of do
Well,
that.
I should go off script here for a second. Shout out to Gwen for giving you. It sounds like you got some great gifts. And I didn't even say when we got on the call today, happy birthday. I know I texted you a bit ago, and just welcome to 28. Just a great year. So much happens. It's so much different than the rest of them. But I also got you a Star Wars gift. And so, like I said, you weren't prepared for this. When I drive down to Indianapolis, hopefully soon.
Yes.
I got you a Clone Trooper 330-second mug that says Clone Wars Chronicles on it.
Put it on the shop. Sam, that's amazing.
So I have a matching one here, and we can we can enjoy some beverages together the next time we do the show. So
if you are listening to this podcast on any, like if you're listening to it on iTunes or Spotify, go back and watch this on YouTube, because that mug, let's see it one more time. That mug is filthy. Oh, I'm very, very excited about that. Clone Wars Chronicles. Come on, man. We got to put that in the shop. Get
that's
people.
Right. Well, yeah, I think you can go grab them on Zazzle, I think is what I got it on.
Dude,
so
thank you so much. I'm so grateful. I feel very seen.
I'm a dummy and sent it to my own house and then realized I was like, I'm not going to put this back in a box and send it to you. So I'm going to drive it to you.
It gives us a great excuse to get together. Come on, man. That is fantastic. I'm very excited.
Happy birthday, Nick.
Thank you, man.
May there always be reminders of Star Wars in your home.
Ah, man.
I tried to get you one that you wouldn't get in trouble for. That was small enough that
you know me well enough, man. That's the stipulation that's been put in my house, is that I can have Star Wars stuff as long as Abby gets a say into it, which sometimes I navigate around. Sometimes
mugs. Nobody notices a mug, right?
No, nobody
Everybody
notices
needs
a mug.
A good mug.
You know what? And I'm neither here nor there. Okay, excited for the show that we got ahead of us. Real quick, Sam, before we jump into it, because it seems pertinent to Clone Wars, we are 16 days away from the Bad Batch releasing on Disney Plus. Let me ask you, Sam, have you been watching any of the Falcon Winter Soldier stuff?
So I haven't. I actually haven't been able to keep up with that one. I've been watching some stuff in my backlog, but I'm excited to. Is there a tie-in here? You're trying to?
No, well, the reason.
Feel free.
Sorry, that was kind of a shot off the bow there. But the reason I bring it up is I've been watching every episode of Falcon Winter Soldier, knowing that each episode that we do or that we get of that is one step closer to Bad Batch coming. That's why I asked. And so next week is going to be the last one. And I'm like only 2 weeks away till we get a brand new Star Wars something.
Show.
And I am ecstatic.
And I think if I remember correctly, it starts on a Tuesday, May the 4th, right? Star Wars Day, 70-minute episode.
And let me ask you, do we get one on that Friday as well?
We do.
Come on, man.
I might as well just take the week off of work.
Honestly, it's not a bad bet.
We could have done a show about the trailer itself. I don't know if I've listened to a couple of other Star Wars podcasts people talking about, but Nick, I'm excited.
Can I ask you a question? If you had to peg it, so far with what you've seen, what you've heard, what you've read, if you had to peg, what are you most excited about for this series? Is there a image that you've seen? Is there something that you've heard? Is it go specific with me? Like, what's the thing that you're excited to see more of, or that has caught your interest up to this point?
Yeah, well, ever since I heard about it, I'm just stoked to get those. Anything in that year or two after the Empire came to power, that excites me, especially from the perspective. I really liked the Bad Batch characters. I thought they were all I think that's a really cool take on the clones and their uniqueness. So that was my general excitement. But if you watched the trailer, you see that. So this isn't spoilers or anything. If you're worried about that, it's on YouTube. It's 2 minutes long. Go watch it. There's a shot where they're, I'm curious about this kid that they're with, but I'm more curious of at one point, you see my guy Rex, and they're with Rex, and they walk over this hill, and it looks like they're near the wreckage from that crash at the end of season 7. That's what it looked like, and I haven't gone back and put it up on a big screen and looked or anything. Sadly, I'm not that detailed, but I am. Whatever's going on there, I mean, anything to do with Rex I'm into, but whatever's going on there, that might be what I'm excited for.
You know what? I'm so glad you brought that up, because I agree. I watched it real quick when I was at work one day. Anybody who's listening that I work with, yes, I watched it at work. Come fight me on
Busted.
it. And we'll do it. Busted, I guess. But yes, when Rex comes over the top, and it was quick. It was one of those, you really had to look for it, to see. I'm interested. I'm very curious. The latest trailer was the one that had it in it, correct, with the kid who they're calling Omega, right? And that's what I'm interested in about. I'm curious as to, it's a she. What's her role? How, at least that's what's been speculated. What's her role in this? why are they using her? Is there something specific, or is she the, I've heard people speculate about Alpha and Omega, like the beginning.
Why
She's
are
the
you the
very
end?
last
Right.
clone ever created. And, for me, though, I would say one of the things that I got really pumped about in that trailer was the appearance of Tarkin. I am
Yeah.
a unapologetic Grand Moff Tarkin fan. Kind of throughout, I love his character. I think I want to see more of him. And so seeing that he was going to be in there, that he was in Rebels, that he was in Clone Wars, and now to see that he's a part of Bad Batch as well, I just get very excited about that. So overall, Sam, I am so excited for this. I was at church this morning, and I had this kid come up to me and tell me that he had just started binge watching Mandalorian. And I said, and he's like, I'm so sad that, this is going to be done and there isn't any like new Star Wars stuff coming. And I was like, oh buddy, give it 2 weeks, man. There's a brand new animated series. And he had never heard of the Clone Wars before either. And I was like, dude, you're watching The Mandalorian on Disney Plus. Now you got to go check out, you got to go check out all this stuff too. So
you just opened up a whole new world.
Pandora's box.
Pandora's box.
If you will.
Omega's box. That's right. Has been opened.
Dude, yeah. Yes. I'm excited about it.
Yeah, very excited. So I'm sure we'll talk about it more when it comes out. Who knows?
Absolutely. I'm hearing a potential spin-off, another podcast of maybe it's Bad Batch and we only talk about Bad Batch on that one and we do something like that. Maybe that's to Brent, Vinny, Mass, Joey, whoever. I'm forgetting some. Alfie. Maybe this is their new little spinoff and we continue to grow this Rule the Galaxy family of podcasts. And we just talk on everything Star Wars. Sam, anything else you'd add of Bad Batch wise?
Outside of just excited. No, that's it, man.
I'm pumped.
I hear a lot of people speculating and I would love to, but it's like, we're getting to the point in the game where it's like, let's just get it.
Let's rock and roll.
I'm going to brush up on, I'll probably spend the next couple of weeks brushing up on the essentials. I know we're parsing through this as a show, but I'll probably go back and watch the big ones before it starts, just to get probably watch season 7 again. Break my heart.
Oh, jeez.
We'll go from there.
For real. And last thing I'll add on Bad Batch, just as I was thinking about it, I don't know when we're going to pick up in the timeline. I'm assuming, again, assumption that they will pick up sometime in the last days of. Obviously we see the speech where, Palpatine comes on and he says, the Republic will be reorganized.
Yeah.
The first, kind of thing. I'm hoping that we see a clone vantage point of like Bad Batch squad vantage point of Order 66. I would love to see. I thought that was one of the greatest parts of season 7. I told this to my dad the other day. I said, hey, I think season 7 of the Clone Wars might be the greatest Star Wars we've got in the last, 10 years? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Maybe not 10, maybe last 8. You know what I'm saying? But just stunning. So that is Bad Batch. Real quick, before we jump into the main topic of what we're going to talk about today, which I'm actually really excited to talk about, we're going to get into a little bit of controversy here. But what I would love to say real quick, if for some reason you're listening to this and you don't follow us, subscribe to a podcast, whatever, man, go follow us on Twitter at rulethegalaxysw. Joe does such a great job running that account. And man, he's posting stuff on there all the time, interacting with people, putting polls up. Give us a follow. Well, pretty good chance we'll follow you back at some point and would love to engage with you on that. If you're listening to this and you go, man, I've hated every arc that these guys have covered up to this point, we'd love to hear from you and hear what arcs do you suggest that we talk about. You can email us at rulethegalaxysw@gmail.com. Shoot us an email. Say, hey, this is great. Keep doing it. Shoot us an email saying, hey, this sucks. Stop doing it. Either way, we'd like to hear from you. And we'll file those in the appropriate places when you do email those to us. So follow us on there. And we're also on Facebook. Did you know that, Sam?
I did not.
We're on Facebook.
I'm not on Facebook. So
I know you're trendy, man. You're with it. We're on Facebook. So get your mom to go like our post or like our page on Rule the Galaxy SW as well. If you're watching on YouTube, I apologize for not saying this earlier, but welcome. So glad that you're with us as well too.
Like and subscribe.
Like and subscribe below. Look at
below.
That. This is where we need a cool graphic to pop up.
That's right.
I don't know how to do that. So, okay. Primary thing we're talking about today is episodes. Let me just make sure I got this right because I think I got it wrong in the last one. We're looking at 3 episodes today. Season 1, episode 8 through 10. It's a 3-story arc. And you know what, Sam? As I was trying to put together some thoughts on this and trying to figure out, who's kind of the central character, right? So like a lot of these arcs, cover some very specific characters. So like when we did the one on Malevolence, it's pretty much Anakin, Ahsoka, Plo Koon, right? Like those are like the 3 they kind of encompass. Surprisingly enough, if I had to say who is the main character of these 3, my first guess would almost be Nute Gunray, right?
I have here written in my notes, I have the ... Gunray arc?
Yeah.
Question mark. That's my title for this one.
And which is interesting. I feel like we see a ton of him in episode 1, and he's kind of he's not the antagonist. He's definitely one of the antagonists in that you get a little kind of almost comedic relief of him in Attack of the Clones, which we won't talk about now. And then in episode 3, you see him just get cut down by Anakin.
Killed, and that's it. Yep.
But I thought it was cool to see him kind of within there. So this first episode 8, and this is going to be a sensitive one, I think, for some people. I feel like there's people that have some really strong opinions about one of the main characters in this one. And I would ask everyone who's listening to suspend judgment for a minute, because as we dive into this, let me tell you, we're going to go deep into some of this stuff. So the first episode is actually, and this is where we're going to lose people, Sam, I can feel it already, is called Bomb Bad Jedi. Bomb Bad Jedi. And what I'd love to do, let me just read the, when you come in and you're watching an episode of the Clone Wars and you hear the crisis on Naboo, like, you hear, and I can't do it. If Joey was here, Joey could do the voice and could help us. Maybe he'll help us do that later.
That was pretty good. I thought that was good.
Thank you.
If I hadn't lost my voice yesterday, I'd give it a shot, but
you know what?
We'll take that.
That's the kind of confidence I need, Sam, to keep doing impressions. So thank you for stoking the ego there. But the plot summary, I guess you could say, this is the voiceover that comes in at the beginning. It says, the Clone Wars threatens the unity of the Republic. As battles rage across the galaxy, more worlds succumb to the seductive lure of the Separatists and leave the Republic. Which, real quick, this wasn't in the show notes, something that I'm seeing as we come through here. Has it ever struck you funny that this is a civil war that's going on, and yet the only insight that we get is, and we don't really get a reason why, we just get Republic's good, Separatists bad, right? I know we talked about it on the Dark Disciple one, where we talked about how, Dooku is being praised as like a hero in that book by the world, that he's coming to liberate from the evil Republic. What I think is interesting, and I've heard people speculate on this, but even the line, more and more worlds succumb to the seductive lure of the Separatists and leave the Republic. For me, I'm curious. I just go like, what is it that the Separatists are doing that's really that bad, other than just seceding, right?
Right. Well,
do you think of anything? Am I missing anything?
No. Well, and they, I hope we do. I hope we get to, we don't get booted from the air. When we get to season 3 and they start to get to that one, or Padme and Ahsoka go to that one planet, and you start to see like the Separatists as like these planets that really believe in what they're doing, not from like the diplomatic side, like, hey, we actually don't want to be part of the Republic. And you really don't get a lot of bad. Sometimes they get into these after they've separated, and then you see the droids like invading and they take over and all this stuff.
Right.
But the thought of like seceding is, they don't really say. They probably keep it intentionally vague.
It's just interesting to me. I thought it was an interesting, again, I know exactly what episode you're talking about, and I can't wait till if we get booted off the air. We're just gonna keep doing it, and if people want to listen, they can listen. But man, I'll tell you, that's interesting to me, this play between right and wrong we do a whole show on that later. We'll get that one going. But so let me finish the synopsis. So more and more, worlds succumb to the seductive lure of the Separatists and leave the Republic. On a vital mission of peace, Senator Padme Amidala journeys to the outer rim world of Rhodia, desperate to ensure its loyalty remains to the Republic. Now, we're not going to do a point by point on some of these. We'll save everybody some time. And if you really want to go see it, you can go watch it. I would love to hit some high level points of this episode, though. And what I think is so interesting right away, Padme gets sent on this mission. Again, whoever's running the Chancellor's schedule has just got that guy booked wall to wall, man. I mean, you think about it, he's FaceTiming Padme, while she's on her way into separatist space because he didn't have anything else going on. Come on. Come on. And what else are we doing?
Oh, I heard that Padme was going somewhere. 2,000 other senators. Yeah, you hold tight for a second.
No wonder planets are seceding. We just got the answer right there. He's playing favorites and he's just chatting up Padme, right? No, but you know what? What stuck out to me right away that I thought was very interesting was, so Padme goes to Rhodia. She meets with the Rhodian senator, and I'm gonna mispronounce it, so you got to help me with this, Sam. But Senator Onaconda Farr.
Onaconda Farr, very good. Farr.
Okay, see, look, that's the confidence I need to just keep doing this stuff. She meets with him though, and she's trying to persuade him, "Hey, stay with us, stay with us." And Padme calls him uncle.
Mm-hmm.
Did you catch that?
I did.
He calls her uncle multiple times, and maybe I missed something, but I think it's very cool. I don't know. We just did a whole episode on family, and talking.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking Rebels, and we were talking about what
great episode, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, Brent, Mass, Joe.
Shouts out to everybody for that one.
Great job on that show. But the idea is, what constitutes a family, and I like seeing, the only other exposure to Rhodians that we have is Greedo, shot McClunky getting shot up in the cantina, and to see another Rhodian now, who she's a human, but she's saying, "Hey, uncle,"
Yeah, I think cool. I really like that. It's like, it almost feels like this weird, like, he's like, because they mentioned that he helped her father out because her father was either a senator or worked in the Galactic Senate in some capacity. And it's just kind of like, we have these galaxy-wide tons of races, different types of aliens and stuff. And, if you all worked under the same building, like that, yeah, it kind of adds I don't know if intimacy is the right word, a very personal, like, feeling of like, oh yeah, you can have like family friends. And that's a thing that exists in Star Wars. It is pretty cool.
Yep, that span multiple planets, and yet, even though close family ties, right? One of the things that I think is really interesting that you see here, and I'd like to plumb this out at some point, is the Rhodians are pissed because they're like, "Hey, vital supply chains have been destroyed, and now my planet's starving." And what Padme finds when she gets there, accompanied also Padme. It's not just Padme solo; it's Padme with C-3PO. And with Jar Jar Binks, which we're going to talk more about Jar Jar Binks in a few minutes. But, Padme shows up, and Onaconda has already made up his mind that they're seceding, and not just seceding, but when Padme arrives, she's arrested. And she's arrested by Nute Gunray, who is there on planet, which I thought was kind of, he apologizes and he said, "I'm sorry it has to be this way." But you see, loyal senator trying to take care of his planet and siding with the separatists who come into the guy saying, "Hey, we'll give you,
Well, you might be answering your question from earlier right now. It's these planets that they convince them that they've fallen to the wayside by the bureaucracy of the Republic and they can't get supplies. And, as you and I know, and hopefully everybody listening, Palpatine, bad, has probably allowed for this to happen instead of doing his job well, to convince these planets that, that they will separate and they will secede. Excuse me.
I would argue they are falling by the wayside, right? So, like, one of my biggest peeves with this episode, and maybe I'll save it to the end, but I'll save it to the end but it ties into this idea of, you're valuable to us until you're not, and then, the second that you are deemed, a necessary planet, sure, we'll send you supplies. We'll do, we'll do whatever you need to keep you with us, but just enough to keep you with us, but not to necessarily take care of you, right? So anyway, Padme is captured, and same, I'm flying over stuff, kind of thing. But this brings us to our kind of big topic, right? Because through all the bumbling, through all the accidents, coincidence, mishaps, whatever, Jar Jar Binks rises as kind of the protagonist of this episode, who is going out to save Padme, right? Now, Sam, let me ask you this, because I know, talk with anybody that knows Star Wars, and everybody knows a couple things, right? The first is, Han Solo shot first, right? Like everybody will tell you, Han Solo shot first, right? In that same vein, you ask people, what was the weakest part of the prequels? And there are people that will say Jar Jar Binks. I'm curious for you, Sam, doing a whole episode with him as the protagonist. What's your take on Jar Jar Binks? I'm curious what you think.
Oh boy.
From the beginning.
So from the beginning until now, my take on Jar Jar Binks is he's controversial.
That's a good way of saying it.
I cannot imagine Star Wars without him.
Wow.
In a way.
Mm-hmm.
But I understand what the annoyance is. I'm a big believer, and this is a hot take that probably I'm gonna take a lot of flack for.
Bring it.
I think The Phantom Menace would be viewed as an all-time great Star Wars movie if you cut like 2 minutes of Jar Jar dialogue. And it's not all of it. I don't think all of it.
Yep. It's
just like 2 minutes of, if you could just like take 2 minutes where it breaks the scene, I think that movie skyrockets in people's minds.
Wow.
But I enjoy having him around. I don't think he's a bad character to have around. I don't think there's bad to have comic relief characters. But an episode revolved around him, it's a little rough. What's your take on it?
You know what? I've been thinking about this since we said we were going to do this episode. I gave Mass a hard time on the last podcast because he said, "What are you doing your next Clone Wars Chronicles on?" And I said, "You're not going to like it." He said, "Why do you think I'm not going to like it?" I said, "Misa think you're not going to like it. I'll just tell you that, right now, because he's not a big Jar Jar guy." I will say this though: the more I sit and I think about Jar Jar Binks, and this is going to catch flack too, I think he is not only integral to the story of Star Wars, I think that he embodies and epitomizes the American dream. Okay, let me explain. Okay, I know. Buckle your seatbelts. Let's explain how this works. Okay. When we find Jar Jar in episode 1, right? Outcast, down on his luck, right? Cast out by everybody, isn't allowed back even where he's from, right? Jar Jar then gets hooked up with the Jedi. Jar Jar is integral in getting the Naboo and the Gungans together, right? Through that, this is why I'm saying he's an integral part of the story, right? Like if Jar Jar's not there, those two groups are not coming together, right?
Nope.
If those two groups don't come together, the Trade Federation doesn't get destroyed at Naboo. Go one step further, right? He now gets elevated to general, right?
Bombad general.
Come on. He gets elevated to this position. Okay, so he's already stepping up. By the time we get to episode 2, okay, he's now almost a junior senator from Naboo. Okay, you talk about a rags to riches, literally, right? Rags to riches story of someone who came down from nothing, rose up to the top. Whether you like it or not, he did it, right? And I'll go one step further, right? Jar Jar Binks in episode 2 is responsible for putting forward the motion to give Chancellor Palpatine emergency powers. If he doesn't have emergency powers, he can't keep the war machine going, right? Can't keep the war machine going. There is no war. If there is no war, there's no fall of Anakin Skywalker to the dark side. Now, some people will say, well, the Force would will it to be a thing. Okay, maybe, but this is the way that the Force did it, right?
Because of Jar Jar.
Because of Jar Jar Binks. And I'll tell you this, you go full circle, right? And I think it was the Aftermath books that actually reference Jar Jar again, right? And they reference him as a street performer on
The Rise and Fall of Jar Jar Binks.
Oh, and it breaks my heart because that's actually, it's pretty sad if you actually think about it. He went from, and he now holds himself personally responsible for it.
Oh, so tragic.
I say all that just to say, anybody who craps on Jar Jar Binks, yes, there are some definitive, if George Lucas wrote the lyrics, if he wrote the script for this weird pseudo speak, that Jar Jar does, that's one thing, right? I would say though, as a character, he's not only valuable, he not only matters to the story, but the story doesn't happen without the freaking Gungan.
There you go.
You know what I'm saying? And so I say, listen, he's annoying, but give him an episode because I want to see his character develop. I want to see how Jar Jar moves. And so many people go, well, he's a one-dimensional wooden character. He's just the goofball comedic relief. We've said it ad nauseum on this show before. Not all Star Wars is created for all people, right? My wife, the first time we watched Star Wars, she had 2 glaring comments, right? First is she goes, I love the Ewoks. To which I said, wow, that's a hot take. There's a lot of people. Dan Barnhart, our buddy, despises them with a passion, right? Like
That's true.
Dan would cut him out of the movie if he could, right? And the second observation was, man, I love Jar Jar Binks. To which I go, of course you do. Of course you do. It wasn't made necessarily for me. It drives the story forward, but it's beautiful nonetheless. And the story doesn't happen without him. Take that to the bank.
Hey, you know what? I'm in agreement that he is integral, and I'm only in agreement, that he is that there is a part of Star Wars for everybody. I think at the end of the day, like, I know it's easy to fall into that. I just want it to fit me so well. So I want it to be a more serious tone. I want it to be this. And it's very clear from the maker himself that it needs to be for everybody. And he designs it, he wrote in some things for kids, and that's okay. And that is okay.
Anyone that says that they want a more serious tone. In episode 4, in the cantina, the guy's got a butt for a face.
Yeah, I mean,
Ponda
right?
Baba, he's got a butt for a face. What are you talking about? I need a more serious tone. You know what I'm saying?
That's right.
I don't know. I'll digress on the subject, but I sit back and I go, okay, integral part. Is he my favorite? No. Does he matter? Yes. And
he does matter. He does matter.
Getting us back to the topic at hand, Jar Jar is tasked to save Padme, and the entire episode, I would say, honestly, there's not a ton to actually sum up. Like when really push comes to shove, it's Jar Jar, creating misfortune that somehow leads to a moment where, the battle droids are destroyed, or
he gets lucky.
He gets lucky. And
yes, he does.
Would say he gets mistaken for a Jedi because of how it was his robe, or was it somebody else's robe? I can't remember.
I don't remember either.
Anyway,
I should have written that down. I have all these other things written down. I don't have that written down.
Jar Jar is mistaken for a Jedi because there are so many things that he does. And again, maybe this is them going back and fixing some of the continuity stuff. Remember there was that theory that went around for a while that Jar Jar was like really Darth Plagueis. You ever hear that one?
Yeah. Well, I was going to bring that up when you were talking about him as the American Dream.
Yeah. Well, I love it because this episode, casts him in the light of a Jedi, and he does just enough ridiculous things that even, Nute Gunray is like, that's a Jedi, kind of thing. Yeah. He's like, I'm not a Jedi, and Ahmad Best.
Misa not a Jedi.
That's kind of the painful stuff. It still matters, but it's painful. Sam, what else stuck out to you about this episode?
You hit on a lot of the big ones there. I mean, it's, you said, do we want his character to develop a little bit more? Absolutely. Did this develop his character a little bit more? Probably not, but it definitely opened the door and clarified that he is a good guy, and he does care about the people around him, which I appreciate.
He does. There were one or two things that stuck out to me about his rescue of Padme, though, that I thought was interesting, and it's less about Jar Jar and it's more about back to the politics thing that we're talking about of this Rhodian Onaconda Far makes this decision to leave the Republic. He now is turning over Padme, and there's even little things that he says where you can see that he's second guessing himself. So like they go to chain Padme up, and he's like, really, are the chains necessary? And Viceroy is just like out for blood. Right?
Oh,
like
yeah.
He's going to murder her by droidica execution squad. Right. Which seems a tad excessive in my mind.
A little bit.
But hey, it's what he does.
To each their own, right? Yeah. Yeah. I think it does paint a picture of, and you do kind of see this in Attack of the Clones, that he's more about vengeance right now when it comes to Padme. Maybe that's why his character kind of falls off as like, we know as the viewer that the bad guy is the Sith and that it's Palpatine, and it's like this behind the scenes bigger thing. But as his character starts to fall, which is why I'm glad they do have an arc that kind of shows him a little bit more, because he's like the face, and I think he thinks that he is a big deal. Like, this is my movement, but we kind of see that he's really just, you really can tell that he is a pawn on the chessboard, and his motives are really just self-driven. He's more vengeance against Queen Amidala than anything to do with Palpatine's plan. Right.
Now, I will say this. One of my favorite parts of this is that we get more development of Padme, right? Where I would say,
shouts out to Catherine Traber, by the way. I think she does a great job voicing Padme. I'm a big, the more I watch the animated shows, the more I like really respect. And And the more I listen to myself, whenever I hear myself on podcasts, I'm like, oh my God, I sound terrible.
Was that a McDonald's drive-through? What happened?
I think she does an excellent job as Padme for not being Natalie Portman. So
right. Well, and I feel like the development that we get in Padme, because I do feel like, one of the qualms that we get of episode 3 sometimes is, well, Padme's character didn't really get developed anymore than, other than just like, now I'm pregnant and I've got a kid. Like, there were so many deleted scenes that got cut of her really like rallying the Senate. There were 200 some senators that, were not in favor of what the emperor was doing.
Actually, might have been 2000.
2000, excuse me. Yeah, not 200, 2000.
Treaty of 2000.
That's it. Yeah. That's it. But she's like primarily responsible for rallying that movement. And we don't see any of that in Revenge of the Sith because we're, focusing on Anakin and we're focusing on Obi-Wan, as we should, but we're focusing on all that other stuff. And what I love in this episode is even when, you get to the end of this episode and Jar Jar saves the day, they capture Nute Gunray, right? But they capture him because, the Rhodian senator picks up a gun and points it at Padme, and Gunray's like, finish her. And Padme, gives him another chance to redeem himself and even says, hey, uncle, why don't you tell Nute Gunray of our plan that we've had all from the beginning? Now, I don't think they actually had a plan from the very beginning. I think she's giving him an out, but she so believes in this concept of the Republic that she's willing to bring him into, give him another chance to jump back in. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. Yeah. You hit it on the head there.
I love the tie over to episode 2. She's once again in the all white jumpsuit, which ain't nobody got time for that. Okay. Just put that out there. Ain't nobody need that in their life, but I like that they hit back to Attack of the Clones.
Yeah. I'm always a big fan of the callbacks. Love me some callbacks.
Yeah. So, okay. Anything else you'd add on that episode? Bomb Bad Jedi, episode 8.
I don't think so. I think you put a good summary on there. I mean, I think, let's move forward.
Let's move forward. Okay. So we move from episode 8 into episode 9, which episode 9, Sam, I'm gonna be honest, of the 3 episodes, this one might be my favorite of them, which it's called Cloak of Darkness. And this one really kind of hovers in over this idea of, okay, we've captured Nute Gunray now. We're transferring him back to, is it Coruscant is where they're taking him back to?
I believe so. Yeah.
They're taking him back to Coruscant. And what I'll do is let me read the synopsis real quick or the voiceover again. Viceroy Gunray captured. Senator Padme Amidala has scored a victory against the Separatist alliance on the remote world of Rhodia, securing the arrest of the diabolical Confederate leader Nute Gunray. The Jedi Council has dispatched Master Luminari Undali. Did I get that right?
Luminara
Undali and Anakin Skywalker's Padme Ahsoka to escort the Viceroy to Coruscant under heavy guard. Once there, he will face trial for his many war crimes. And maybe that's an answer of itself of my question at the beginning. I would be curious as to the actual war crimes, right? When I hear war crimes, I think of some pretty dark things.
Anything Anakin does in the coming 7 seasons.
Pretty much the murder of children, I think, many war crimes. I just think it's interesting. But what I did think was more interesting about this episode was that you get more Ahsoka buildup, right? So like you get more background into Ahsoka without Anakin. Any guess as to why Luminara and Ahsoka are together on this mission? Like we didn't have any other Jedi, so we picked these two.
No, this whole first season kind of like one. I love that this first season more than they bring in the other Jedi, right? And each Jedi, Kit Fisto, which we'll talk about, Plo Koon,
right,
Luminara, they get like so much more screen time than they ever did in the movies, and that's great.
Yeah. But
it also kind of breaks the expectation you have from if you had only ever watched the original trilogy and the prequels of, your Padawan is your Padawan. Like you are a team. Like this is a bond that happens. And then we get to these episodes and Ahsoka's she's just wherever. She's just kind of
anywhere and everywhere.
Shoots. And now what I assume is that since they've moved into like a wartime kind of a state, I guess, that since the Jedi are the generals, I don't know where the Padawans fall on the. I'm not well versed in my Republic command chain. Wherever they fall, and they must just get moved around for different assignments.
You hit on something good. I think it's season 7, right? Where, and we'll talk about this obviously later, but when Rex is talking about, like without this war, I wouldn't have been created, right? And Ahsoka says something similar, and she says, I was supposed to be a peacekeeper. All I've ever known as a Jedi is being a general, right? So what I'd be curious in is to your point exactly. So what, all Padawans now are just, we're saying you're a general now and you've got this, and here, lead this battalion of, people and where you go. So I think that's really interesting to me. What I did think was cool was that we saw, again, I'm a big fan of those Venator class Star Destroyers. I think we see those all throughout Clone Wars. This was the first one in my immediate memory, aside from maybe the Malevolence ones we did, where the main story takes place on this ship, and you see the inner workings. One of my favorite parts of Rebels, right, is the amount of times they're on a Star Destroyer or they're in the bowels of this ship, right? And this was where you really get to see that. And it takes place on a Venator class Star Destroyer as they're transporting Nute Gunray. And again, seems like all would be well. We're transferring him there. But lo and behold, we get another surprise visit from Dooku's favorite assassin / apprentice, Asajj Ventress.
Yep. Well, I need to interject here. It's a space thing.
Interject.
This is a common theme because it's a show. Why are we ferrying dangerous criminals in sublight speeds across the galaxy?
I'll never understand. It's almost the same question as when you watch The Mandalorian, right?
Why is there a prison ship sublight through space?
What sense does that make?
I guess the thought would be, and I don't need to spend a lot of time on this. I guess the thought would be there's so much space that the odds of finding them would be low. The flip of that is if you know the endpoints, why? You can't invade a ship in hyperspace. You just go from Rhodia to Coruscant, plug it in the computer, and go. I don't understand.
Point B. Wait, you know why, Sam? Because it makes for great drama.
It does make for great drama.
That's why this happens.
And I'm glad this episode exists because you're right. This is one of my favorites from this season and definitely from this arc.
Well, and what I think is interesting is we see a side to not clones, but we get a little more clone development in this one. One of the characters that I did want to spend a few seconds on, just because I think it's worth looking at, is let me see if I can. Oh, Commander Gree. Yeah.
Commander Gree.
Of the Senate of the. Oh no. Sorry.
He's a clone commander.
He's a clone commander. Who's the one that I'm thinking of? You know who I'm talking about?
Argaius.
Pharaoh Argaius. Which, let me just tell you, if there was ever a bad guy name and/or haircut, it's this guy, right?
Yeah.
You don't have to look at him that hard to go, man, this guy's a bad dude.
Yeah, I love his Greek name.
Yeah,
it's very Mediterranean.
Very stab you in the back,
guys.
But I do think it's interesting that you see Senate Guard that's come, to essentially provide security. Did we ever get a good reason why they were there? I can't remember.
No, I think they make some point about how it's just a high level thing. So they bring in the kind of personal Senate Guard, and it's a unique look, right? Because we've only seen clones up to this point. I guess we had to assume there was a military beforehand. So it's kind of interesting to get the dynamic there, which I'm sure we'll go into, but I think that's the reason that he's there. Yeah.
Well, and this leads us to the point where, they've got Nute Gunray under lock and key. The Separatists deploy some ships they come out of hyperspace to attack. Could have been in hyperspace the whole time, but they come out of hyperspace to attack. And there was one part that I thought was very cool. It's worth a rewatch if you're sitting here and you're listening to this episode going, man, is it worth watching? The corkscrew landing devices that the super battle droids come on, very, very cool to me. Seems super problematic. But to me, I think it's very cool that you can attach your ship at any given point from these, corkscrew devices that literally embed themselves on the side of your ship.
Almost like wall anchors. If you've ever used those, put stuff over, it's goes in and whoosh, it opens up. Yeah. And you better hope that thing seals, otherwise you're in trouble.
That's exactly what I thought. And I had the other thought too, hey, none of your droids need air to breathe. So better idea. Why are we not, like, if those can fight through shields, why the heck aren't we just shooting those, punching a bunch of holes in the ship, and letting the atmosphere escape the ship? Any good answer?
So I just my brain was off there for a second. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know why they don't do that.
I don't have any good answer.
Yeah, but as we see, it's a distraction, right?
It is definitely
droids attack, and
it is. And we see sorry, my internet cut there for a second. So if there was a weird delay and you're like, yo, what just happened? Why couldn't I hear Nick or Sam? What happened? That's my internet. So thank you. That's what we're figuring out. Sam, as we continue to talk this episode, Asajj Ventress makes herself known, shows up. And this is something that, again, we don't need to go blow by blow on this, but I do think it's very interesting. All throughout this episode, we hear, Count Dooku talking to Ventress saying, like, your technique is sloppy. Like, you're not, you're not as good as some of the other Jedi. Like, you're a liability, all this kind of stuff. Even when she duels Luminara and Ahsoka, Luminara is like goading her, saying, like, your technique is sloppy. Like, I noticed Dooku, but it's just not good. And yet she's like besting a Jedi Master, Luminara, in lightsaber combat.
Yeah. I mean, she's no slouch.
No.
I did find it interesting that she kind of goaded her there. One big Luminara fan. Always was very intrigued.
Are you?
By her in the movie. I don't know if it's just like the black garb and get up, but definitely a very like intriguing Jedi Master to me. And right. I think it's interesting that she does that, because just to hit on a point that we kind of miss, and there's a couple of big points that I think are worth talking about.
Bring them all up. I'm jumping.
And I'll get to Ahsoka and Ventress in a second, but the goading part's interesting because as we have these episodes where Ahsoka is with these different Jedi Masters, and I assume, and maybe it was in one of the special features or something, a lot of it is showing how with her training from Anakin and her like brashness and she's kind of finding her way as a Jedi, right? And to see her interact with these different Jedi Masters. There's this scene when they're interrogating Nute Gunray.
Yeah, man.
And he's just kind of like saying whatever. And then she's like, I'm just sick of this. And like throws like her fist down, pulls her lightsaber out, and like goes up to his neck. And obviously Luminara, sorry for my voice here, isn't having that. Yeah. Because that's not the Jedi way. So she is very much, it's very clear that she's like more of an Obi-Wan, like I'm very dogmatic in my Jedi belief. So then to really goad her is a really interesting thing.
You know what, Sam? You bring up such a good point there. There's another episode, and I can't remember where it is. It'll be worth us covering at some point. But you remember Anakin is interrogating Poggle, the Lesser, right? He's interrogating him, and he does almost the same thing, except instead of the lightsaber, he starts force choking him, right? And that's where you see the, rubber hitting the road a little bit for him. What I'd be curious, and again, like, to me, this is all, what are you not seeing, right? So, like, you get some Jedi, and you see little parts of the story here and there. Has she seen him do this before? Right? Is this a learned behavior? I would imagine it's a learned behavior that she's seen from Anakin at some point. Is there another story that we just don't know that she's done? Because the two were too similar in my mind, watching it back, going like, seeing that.
But you never see them do it together, really.
Never.
Yeah. It's a good point. It's
a little moral gray area, right? We're using fear to, get some of that. But sure enough, Gunray starts talking.
Yep. Yeah. Well, and then Luminara sees that it works, and it's like, oh, all right. Well,
I hate it, but okay, if it works. We'll
just roll with it. That's great. No, yeah. Well, and they duel, and their duel is awesome. I think that some of these duels that they have in this episode they get so much better as the show goes on, because the animation gets a lot better. Right. They're still pretty like wooden puppety in these earlier ones. I would use that comparison. Still looks fine. Like, I don't think it takes away from anything, but this is probably one of the better duels in the early seasons, in my in my personal opinion.
Yeah, especially again, I love any sort of action you get inside of a Star Destroyer. I don't know if that's like the little kid in me coming out going like, how cool would it be to see, something like that. But the duel between Luminara and Ventress, even just the two of them, where she, cuts the steam and the steam blinds
gets into her eyes. Yeah.
Luminara, I think that is so, it feels very like a Three Musketeer-ish, using the environment, kind of all throughout. I just thought it was very, very cool. And then you add in this other component, which is one of my favorite episodes of this, or parts of this episode is, and it's one of the points I wanted to hit on. We're out of order a little bit, but was, Luminara tells Ahsoka, stay here and guard Gunray. I'm going to go capture, I'm going to go take out Ventress. So she leaves, and Ahsoka's like, yeah, you can't take her by yourself, which I think is interesting that Ahsoka knows that. But she says, you can't take her by yourself. And I forget his name. I don't know why I keep having such a hard time. Argaius, yes, the Greek guy, gets on there and he looks at her and he says, hey, sometimes being a good soldier is doing what you think is right. Right. Mm-hmm. And so he sends Ahsoka out to go.
Well, and Gree interjects and says, well, I would do what I'm told. That's interesting.
And again, that's where I was saying earlier, like the character development of the clones, right? You see some more complexities of being clone. Of course you would do what you're told. You got a microchip in your head that when they say Order 66 causes you to just short circuit and do exactly what they say to do. But what I thought was interesting was how Argaius uses that later to justify his freeing of Nute Gunray and helping him escape, right? We all knew it was coming because we'd seen, Attack of the Clones, we've seen Revenge of the Sith. We knew that the escape was inevitable, but I thought it was interesting that it was a Republic Senate guard that goes, here's what I think is right to get this done.
Yeah. Well, and again, he brings up a point that if you were floating in the morally gray or undecided, where he says, well, I don't want, like, if I don't believe in this, I don't want to just live a life of servitude to what I don't belong for. I want something else. I want something better. Now, what he wants is ultimately selfish. And as we see,
happens, man.
Don't side with those guys.
Yeah.
But his conversation there, because like you said, they eventually betray and Gunray gets out and they fight, and Gree and him have that conversation where it probably, maybe subconsciously, I didn't realize this, but kind of like sets the stage for, the compassion you kind of feel for the clones, because they all have their individual stories. And like you said, all these kids online that have these huge Star Wars accounts, and you're like, oh yeah, you're just some kid who lives in the UK. Sorry if that's you and you end up listening to this.
Keep posting. We like your stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's great. But your favorite characters?
Fives
or something. And like, I love Fives. And that's a great arc. And you do feel for it, probably because you know that their life is ultimately, I won't say meaningless, because they're characters, and that's what they go to show you, is that it's not. But in their own mind, they do have this just, that's what they're bred for, right? It's to be servants. And yeah, this is one of the darker episodes. Really that was one of my big points, because not only do you have the, Ahsoka going full terrorist interrogation, you have this all of a sudden really deep sense of duty and almost the hopelessness that the clones have of being that, and then there's just a lot of death that is Asajj Ventress cuts down some clones in some ways that are not great.
pretty violent,
pretty
like for
violent.
A kid show targeted towards, because this wasn't Adult Swim. This was like,
no.
Prior to all that, I thought it was I think you're right on, and you spoke about it, Sam. And if I'm beating you to the punch, I'm sorry, but when Argaius, they depart on this ship, and through the back, Ventress.
Well, yeah, he then, so this is the continuing theme of Ventress, right? She just gets goads into it. He's like, oh yeah, I'll put your part of it in the report, like this was all me. And she's like, yeah, you're not a Jedi, you're done. Right through the back, and they show the whole thing. Dude. You just see it come out the front. And I wrote, here's what I have in all caps, holy bleep, so dark.
So
That's all
dark.
I wrote.
So dark.
Yeah, probably one of the darker moments of the show, for
Right.
sure.
Which, okay, just naming a theme as you see it, right? You, again, maybe this is where you look at, I know that there's good and bad on each side, and yet what's the theme that we see in these episodes between Gunray, between Ventress, between Dooku? It's all, and we'll see it again in the next one that we look at with Dooku. It's this idea of like, I'm out to get mine. If
Mm-hmm.
you get in my way or you're not useful to me anymore, I'm going to get rid of you.
Yep.
I don't need you anymore.
Yep.
Right. Which I think is very interesting. Sam, anything else you would add on this episode? Again, dark, really good. And you know what? I would add one more real quick because that I think is really good. The entire episode, and maybe this was worth them putting Luminara and Ahsoka together in it. At the very end of the episode, I forgot about this. Luminar calls Ahsoka Padawan the entire episode, right?
Mm-hmm.
Eventually, Ahsoka saves Luminara's life, saves her, and by the end of the episode, now Luminar is calling her Ahsoka. And Ahsoka even notices it and points it out, and Luminar tries to skid past it, but she's earned some respect. Again, back to the character development. You see these, which again, I don't know if every Jedi apprentice gets this, but just the mad amount of, Jedi masters that she gets to engage with that know her, that can teach her, that can help her. In the first episodes of this, we see her with Plo Koon. They've got this really tight relationship. You see her with Luminara now, who, true or false, is the master of Barriss Offee, who we're going to talk about at some point.
Yep.
Which is coming. But yeah, I just thought it was an interesting development. Again, you see more and more of, I'm moving from Snips to Padawan to Ahsoka, the Jedi.
The Jedi. Yep. No, you that's the exact parallel I was going to say. The really this one, and man, I'm sorry, I'm blanking. I don't think we did talk about it when we did Malevolence. The parallels between Ventress and Ahsoka, and well, I would be remiss if we moved on and I did one of my favorite pieces of dialogue. So she pops in. I don't know if you remember this, Ventress, because she sneaks through. There's the distraction. She sneaks through. She gets in there,
right?
And she looks at Ahsoka, and what does Ahsoka say? She says, "It's just if it isn't the hairless harpy," and then immediately it's just like, well, if it isn't Skywalker's little rat or something.
Yeah.
It starts off a great dynamic that goes throughout the show. But as apprentices, right, it is kind of that parallel. And I like that we get to see them both absent their masters, because, like you said, Ventress, goated, all these things, it gets kind of beaten down. And again, if you're not useful, you're hitting the road. So she ends, and she did her job, but again, just gets goated, kills the game. Whereas Ahsoka grows throughout the episode, at least some, right? Learns from her mistakes and gets that amount of respect. So that parallel of like, look, I'm doing what I can for Ventress, still's not enough. So I'm doing what I can, and she grows, and I think that's just really cool. Kind of side plot there.
Yeah, this was a good episode, and I think
this was a good episode.
Of the three. Again, I would say this might be my favorite of them from a strict. And again, you could argue, well, there's not actually a ton going on, but it doesn't feel like a throwaway episode by any means.
Right.
Which leads us into episode 10, which is the third of this 3-part arc, entitled "The Lair of Grievous." Which one I thought what I liked most about this episode at the very beginning. You know how you get your little proverb, at the beginning, kind of where they go. I like the one, most powerful is he who controls his own power, right? Which I thought just a cool, it preaches exactly to what the Jedi teach, right? It's all about control. It's all about mastery of self, kind of, whereas the dark side is all, my power will rise up to meet your power, and what true strength actually looks like. So Sam, let me read the voiceover, kind of like what we've done, and then we can dive into this episode and talk a little more, because I know you really like this one.
I do really like this one a lot. This is and the film nerd in me, I really like this one stylistically. I think it's a great episode, a lot of substance, and we'll talk about that. But I'll give just a quick shout out of stylistically, this episode is one of a kind as far as Clone Wars goes. Probably because it was directed by I'm gonna try this name, Atsushi Takuchi, which is only I tried my best.
You did great. You did great. I was reminded when you did that of the Mike Myers. It's probably canceled now. I don't know if I can say it, but the Chris Farley, where he's on the Japanese game show.
Oh yeah,
Haji Chu Haji.
I tried my best.
It's
the only episode he ever did.
That.
I think he's big in Japanese television. The only one he ever did, and this is just a beautiful episode. But you read the summary. We'll get to the big points, and I'll save mine for when we talk about the art of Star Wars someday.
Deal. Okay. The plot summary: Viceroy Gunray escapes. That's what we just covered. En route to Coruscant to stand trial for war crimes, evil Separatist leader Nute Gunray has broken free of his Jedi escort. With the help of Count Dooku's sinister agents, the villainous Viceroy has made a daring getaway. Alerted to the bold prison break, Jedi Master Kit Fisto has traced the stolen ship to the remote system, hoping to recapture Gunray and return him to justice. Which I will say, you said stylistic. Some of my favorite scenes are planetary orbits of this, where you get to see a cool ship. There is a picture, and maybe I can share this, and I can show you this. And if you're watching on the live stream, I think you can see it. There's a picture. I'll fight with it and I'll figure out how to do it. I can't figure out how to do it right now. But anyway, the docking ring that all these Jedi starfighters have, where they, come out of hyperspace and they fly in on their ships. To me, it's just beautiful. And they start off that way again. That's kind of a nod to like, hey, remember we talked about this in, or you saw this in the actual film movies. And I love this. Here, I found the picture. Let me see if I can share this to you. If you're listening on the podcast, it probably does you no good. But if you're watching on YouTube, once again, follow us on YouTube at Rule the Galaxy. You can see it. But to me, just this beautiful orbit shot that you get, hovering above this kind of hazy looking planet. Just beautiful. That was something that stuck out to me right away.
Yeah, no, this is a beautiful episode. From the planet design to his layers design, which we'll talk about, and even just the way they make it's very symmetrical. Like there's always there's these weird not to break the fourth wall, but these straight on shots of and everything's equal. It's very very interesting. But
well, and you said it, Sam. We get more random Jedi in this first season than I would say than we even do in some of the other seasons. But what I loved was the return of Kit Fisto. We first got Kit Fisto in. We got him in 2003 in the Tartakovsky Clone Wars. And remember, it's almost parallel to what you'll see in season 4 of Clone Wars, where they go to the water planet
underwater,
Mon Calamari.
Yeah.
And he's fighting. I remember being a little kid watching, Kit Fisto swimming underwater with his lightsaber, fighting droid starfighters underwater, thinking it was the coolest thing you'd ever seen. And so then to get another version of him, I thought was just awesome.
Well, and if you were a movie only guy, you only got that time in Attack of the Clones when he force pushes C-3PO's battle droid body and then gives the little that smiles and runs away. And you're like, all right, who is this guy?
That, or you get him being just instantly killed by Palpatine.
Yep.
Just they didn't even think about it, so but what I think is cool is, again, you talk about character development. We get a little character development for Kit Fisto, who, when he arrives on the planet, is met by his former apprentice. And I'm going to say this one wrong. You want to go for it? You want to try that one?
Yeah, it's Nadar. What's his last name? Veb. Nadar Veb. Mm-hmm.
Who happens to be a Mon Calamari.
It's true. We don't see a lot of Mon Calamari Jedi. This might be the first.
We don't, which is interesting. In that Master and Apprentice book by Claudia Gray, they do detail some of the Jedi Temple to a degree, and they talk through there are whole floors of the Jedi Temple that are all just aquatic, And when you hear that, you're like, well, what kind of Jedi are? And so this is a cool.
That is cool.
Again, Star Wars playing well together and going no, we have Kit Fisto can breathe underwater, right? Nadar Veb can breathe underwater. Why would we not have meditation chambers where they could, meditate in the quiet? And so I will also say something that stuck out to me right away was the clone squad that's with them. It never formally gets named,
Right.
but they look almost identical to Bravo Squadron in the 2003 Clone Wars.
Mm,
The very silent, they don't say anything. They just, use the hand motions to
yeah.
communicate to each other. It's the red on white to me that stuck out and made me
Mhm.
go, wow, is this the same crew? I don't think it is, but because it's technically Legends, but I just thought it was beautiful. And what's so cool is that they move from, hey, we're here to, just capture Nute Gunray, and they immediately give you a little schism between master and apprentice,
Mhm.
where you can tell right away, Nadar has just passed the Jedi trials and he's gung ho, man. He's like, got all that Anakin angst of,
Yes.
I got something to prove, I will avenge all these clones that are being slaughtered. I can take on Grievous. I can do it myself. And Kid Fisto's like, yo, did you forget everything that I taught you and I trained you about all the ways of the Jedi? I thought it was very interesting that, Obi-Wan gets crapped on for how he trained Anakin, right? And, there's all kinds of interpretations where you see it where Obi-Wan is, badgering Anakin, constantly in his ear, like, now's not the right time, the right place for you to act this way or do this or do that. I thought it was interesting to see that it's not just an Obi-Wan thing, but it's a Jedi thing as a whole, where this guy's a Jedi Knight now, right? Like, Kit Fisto's his master, but he's kind of on his own. And even from the very start of this episode, Kit Fisto's like, hey, did I teach you restraint? Like, do you not remember when I
Mm,
taught you all that kind of stuff? And I thought it was just kind of a funny little jab of way to start the episode, almost some foreshadowing of what was to come.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you'll see that theme throughout this episode. It's just that new Jedi so brash, and I'll when we get to the end, I'll bring you my favorite quote from this whole thing because I think it's a good way to wrap it up. But
Deal.
interesting character. Nadar is kind of I'm here for Kit Fisto's accent, big time.
Oh man,
Uh,
yes.
yeah, just need to just interject on that one a little bit.
It's very strong. It's a strong voice.
Very strong, but very soothing, very
Very soothing.
comforting.
Like, I
If I
want him
was
to
a
read a
clone,
book.
if I was a clone and Kit Fisto was my Jedi, I'd be like, yeah, it's going to be okay.
Come on.
Even though it is not okay for these clones.
Even though there's 100% chance I'm being ruthlessly slaughtered, at
Yeah, if
least
we
I'll
go into
die
this
with the
place.
soothing voice of Kit Fisto.
Yeah.
With me. And so they break into this. What is it? Is it a temple? Is it a
I mean,
base?
it's the lair of Grievous, and it is
Right.
kind of like a cavern of some sort. It's like a maze, almost like a labyrinth, is what
Right.
I would call it. Yeah.
But you know what? What I did like about this is that it's kind of the Jaws mentality, where like you don't actually know the bad guy until like halfway through, and so like they go in to go find Grievous. They find some battle droids, and they're very quickly met with a hologram of Count Dooku, who essentially is like, "You're in a trap. Like, I've trapped you." And they're like, "Well, where are we trapped?" And then you see Grievous flying in on his ship, and what you find is not only is it a trap for the Jedi, but this is actually a trap for Grievous as well too.
Mhm.
And Dooku kind of testing Grievous in this like, "Hey, I'm bringing Jedi right to you. You either kill them or be killed. Like, it's one of the two." And I thought that was an interesting. I like how you said at the beginning, kind of the thematic film things. I can't put my finger on it what movie it reminds me of, but it's almost like this idea of, what's the movie? I can't even remember it off the top of my head, but it's just like, we're going here to do one thing, and then the plot totally changes and divulges into almost like this had like some horror themes to me.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
like it felt like a horror movie, almost like,
it's kind of like a cat and mouse sort of game.
Yeah, like a squad of soldiers goes into this one place to fulfill a mission. You know what it felt like to me a little bit? And you're going to laugh at me for this, but like, Predator, when they go into the jungle and then it's slow, like very quickly, like it's not even about the mission we were on. It's about getting out of here and surviving.
That's probably the best one to put, because it's like they all of a sudden, now obviously the Predator is not a good analogy for Grievous, but they've gone in for a purpose, and all of a sudden, like, they're the prey.
Yeah,
like they're the bait for whatever. And yeah, that's a good comparison.
I thought it was interesting. And even so, here's a question that I had for you, and I watched it back, and I think I know the answer to this, but I may be wrong. There is a statue in Grievous's lair when they first like are figuring out who it is, and you see this. You've never seen Grievous without a mask on, right? Like the only Grievous we ever see is this, but we do know through this wonderful book, the visual dictionary of the Clone Wars, that he was a Kalishi warlord at one point, right? That was in a horrific accident, and some people even think that it was Count Dooku that caused the accident. But I'm curious for you, do we think that statue was a former statue of Grievous?
Okay, so I'll bring my here. I actually have it. I pulled up my Blu-ray copy.
Man,
I watched
these.
They've
we are
got
just
these
sourcing everything today.
I know. Well, they have these cool little like 5 to 7 minute ish long commentaries with like Dave Filoni. I think Henry Gower is one of them. Like Matthew with the Saga, just with all these guys that work on the show, right? And they talk about how you're right in. Before this show, that he was just a Kalishi warrior. Was it an accident? Was it caused by Count Dooku? Was it one singular thing? They see a couple of statues, and it kind of like moves on where it starts on as like a very organic figure, and then if you know, I never noticed this. The second one has a robotic arm, and then the third one has a robotic arm, and it's got a Grievous like face, and it's like they say this in the thing, like Dave Filoni's like, we want to keep it pretty vague and keep it open. But that you see that he really believes that these are enhancements. Like he knows he'll never be able to use the Force, but he just like continues to enhance himself. So I think it is him. It is a representation of him.
He does talk about later in this episode when he's being repaired.
Improvements. That's what he says.
And he says improvements. And they said, like, why would you subject yourself to this? And he says, I've not subjected myself to anything. I've improved myself.
Yeah.
So, man, that's a very interesting, that would be a cool, you know what I'm curious about? You may know the answer to this. Are the visual dictionaries considered canon?
I do not know that. And I would imagine anything to do with the movie is, but I wonder if there's background if they're not.
But so here's my question. Like, this is going to take us on a rabbit trail. James Luceno wrote this Revenge of the Sith. The same guy that wrote Tarkin.
Yeah.
Which is no longer canon?
I think Tarkin is.
Is it?
Tarkin should be.
I also know James Luceno, though, wrote Plagueis, and Plagueis is no longer canon.
Not canon.
Because that would throw around. It should be canon.
So good.
Which, by the way, little promotion for it. At some point, we're going to do another Lothal library, and the next book that we have coming up is Darth Plagueis. So stay tuned for that if you're listening. Forgot how good that book was. Oh, my goodness. Just page turner from the very beginning. But I'd be curious because in this, it pretty distinctly says that it was an accident, or like he got shot down, or there was something like that. And now with the improvement language, I'd be curious, how that plays into it and what that means. And I did think it was interesting, Sam, the amount of like Grievous masks that they had in there.
He's got so many parts. Like,
it's just crazy.
Yeah.
So like, what happens now? Like they know where the layer's at.
They never really clear that up. I mean, that's kind of the thing at the end where obviously everything kind of gets destroyed. Do they ever come back? I mean, do they just assume he's moved somewhere else? Who knows? Who knows?
I don't know. But so, sorry, Sam, did I cut you off?
No.
So they realized very quickly this is the lair of Grievous. And you know what's funny? You said it a second ago where they said, they were predator, now they've become the prey. But I don't even think that kicks in until they actually confront Grievous, because they see it as an opportunity to go, hey, we know where Grievous is going to be, and so now we can take him. And I asked you this question before we jumped on, and I know, you could argue it's not the Jedi way, kind of thing. Any reason why we're trying to capture this guy? Because reality is, like, by the time we get to Revenge of the Sith, I may be wrong, but from what I remember is, like, they're trying to get Kenobi to kill him. Yeah. Because the reality is, they're like, if we kill him, the war's over.
Yeah.
Right? So, like, is it just a timeline thing where it's like, no, maybe we can still capture him, but then we realize, no, this dude's freaking nuts, and we need to kill him. Why are we trying to capture this guy?
Yeah, it could be a timeline thing that they haven't like fallen fully. I know that and they never fall to the dark side, right? But it continues to cloud them. Could be that they don't understand Grievous yet. I know that the 2003 Clone Wars isn't canon anymore, but he's kind of a mystery. Even up until Revenge of the Sith, it's all of a sudden like, oh crap, here's this thing. So maybe they don't realize how robotic he is, right. And how. So it could be something like that. But you're right. Stupid.
You know what I'm saying?
Where
Like, how many clones got killed because
where
we're
are the
trying to capture them?
nukes?
Where are the
Where
nukes?
just fly on over, let it happen. But
Drop a
then again, they got
seismic
there
charge on
first,
them.
right? Yeah, they got there first. So
But what I do think is interesting, where I said earlier, it's like the horror tropes that you see in this thing.
yeah,
The idea for me of very dark, very what I thought was interesting was most of the light that we see in this is from like from the guns of the clone troopers. So it feels like you're in a dark tunnel trying to capture them, and it adds this like eerie feeling to it, as well as when Grievous is fighting. Man, like they could have made this thing way more ruthless than it actually was, right? I'm thinking in my mind, like now that we've seen The Mandalorian season 2 and you see Boba Fett just like go ham on these stormtroopers and he's like breaking the
busting
composite
skulls.
armor. Yeah, you know, all that kind of stuff. Like if you wanted to, because it's all robotic, you know what I'm saying? Like you see Grievous like throwing dead bodies of clone troopers at the apprentice and at Fisto, you know what I'm saying? Like, and using them as weapons almost while he doesn't have any legs. To me, I thought it did such a great job of painting, like, you know, sometimes we see Grievous in the show or in the movies and he's coughing, you know, seems like a big coward, and he is a coward, but the reality is like, I still wouldn't want to be trapped with him.
No. Yeah, it's so his like, again, I'll say like public, right? Which is like to the non-viewer, and then to the viewer, like his persona is just so different. Like he's like a terror to the clones, and he's just so brutal. But like to us, we get the like cowardly, like I want my droid security. I want to make sure I always have an out. I need to do this to get the upper hand. And yeah, just a very fascinating Grievous episode. Like he's pissed the whole time about Dooku putting him in this position and having to do this, but like that he also wants to be that way, and it's kind of a whiner.
Huge whiner. I thought the one that stuck out to me the most was when he's arriving on the planet and Dooku's like, how come you still are not like winning battles? And he's like, you expect me to win battles and you're giving me a droid army. Like that's all you give me, you know? And it's just like, dude, you are the biggest whiner.
Yeah. Just, it'll never be enough. It'll never be enough for him.
Never, ever be enough. And what I thought was interesting too was the droid that Grievous has who like repairs him all the time. The droid's name is EVA4D, but he goes by something else. He goes by Gorg or Gore.
No, I think Gore is the name of the.
That's it. I got it wrong.
Big monster.
Yep, the name of the big monster. Which you want to tell us about that, because I thought that was an interesting part of this as well too.
Just a great big old space monster.
Naturally,
but kind of reminiscent of like the Rancor. You know, all of a sudden this thing coming in, which always appreciate a throwback. But again, it's Grievous using he's trying to use something else to take care of the work for him. It's just the commander, Nadar and Kit Fisto, and they get cornered into this room, and this big old creature, what are they? A rogwort.
Nice.
That's what the creature's called. Called Gore. Now, the commander, who is Commander Phil, apparently. Phil, gets killed.
Not PHIL.
not to be confused with the other Commander Phil. Gets killed. So then this eventually, but the Jedi make quick work from him. But again, it's just I like that they use the horror trope. I liked this part. But it is just Grievous being a coward again.
It is. Well,
but it really sets Nadar off. By the time Kill gets killed, you know, you talked about earlier, he's been so brash, and I can do this now. I'm a Jedi Knight now. I can do this now, and doing all this. And this might be the time. I'm going to bring it up here. He's so mad after Phil dies, right? And Fisto's being calm. He's a Jedi Master.
Sorry, I'm still laughing at Commander Phil. Really?
I know.
Even if we spell it FIL,
I'm just going to call him the Commander from now on.
Phil!
But he's just so mad, and you know, Kit Fisto. I wish I had written that what Kit Fisto had said to him, because again, he's very much like, hey, you know, we're here, we have a mission. You know, this isn't the Jedi way. Like, just he's very much a Jedi. He's a Jedi Master. And Nadar says, and I don't have the whole thing written down, but he's like, you don't understand. Like, this war has changed things.
Yes.
Like, and it really shows, like, is this how all young Jedi are right now? Because
Yep.
it kind of is. And he goes, the rules have changed. He's like, you have to beat strength with strength. The rules have changed. And you're like, whoa, that's 1,000 years of Jedi history are being challenged here by people who, as Ahsoka said in the last episode, or as she says at the end of the show, all I've ever known is how to be a soldier. The rules have changed. So I thought that was a very poignant line that will lead to some foreshadowing of they have changed, but not the way you want them to, Nadar.
Right.
Sorry, bud.
Not the way you want. And who are you to come along and try to change the system, right? That's been saying essentially for 1,000 years, we do us, right? Like we do us in the middle of, like, no matter what happens, we continue to, pursue this Jedi way. I don't know. I think you're right on, and I think it's very interesting.
Yeah.
And so it actually leads to this point though, where, all throughout the episode, Kit Fisto keeps going like, hey, don't, be under control, be under control, be under control. And it leads to Nadar going, hey, I'll go fight Grievous myself. And he engages in lightsaber combat with Grievous. And it's tragic because it's almost like projected, right? Like you can see what's going to happen. And Grievous does what Grievous does. Oh, go for it.
And Kit Fisto has to watch on
he watches. Yep.
On the telecast or whatever.
Which, let me ask you this. So he watches, and just to fill in the puzzle piece, Grievous kills Nadar, and he kills him in kind of a cheap,
shoots him,
blocks his lightsaber with 2 of his arms, and with the 3rd arm, shoots him 3 or 4 times, kills him dead. Kit Fisto watches this, and here's my question for you. I was thinking when I watched this of episode 1, when Qui-Gon is killed, right? Obi-Wan's response, no, and like yells. I felt like Kit Fisto's response watching Nadar die, this is one of my biggest peeves of this episode, does not match where you would actually be if you watched a kid that you trained your whole life get slaughtered.
And there's the conflict, right? There's the reservation of the jet. He's very resigned. He's just like, and it's like, that's the sort of stuff that like the Anakin Skywalkers of the universe don't, the Ezra Bridgers, that they don't. Right. It's this, it's like, okay, we're compassionate, we're peacekeepers, we're the good guys. Right. Can we not even, have we gotten to a point where we can't feel grief and emotion of the fact that we lost somebody close to us? Right. And you're right. It's sad.
It's really sad. And I'll tell you this, and again, if we're gonna come back and we can cycle back to it, we can. But Kit Fisto escapes, right? And he makes it back to Coruscant. And to your point exactly, one of the most aggravating parts of this episode for me is when Kit Fisto is standing in the council high chamber, and he's sitting there, and Yoda asks, or Mace Windu said, "And what of your apprentice? Like what happened to him?" And Nadar essentially says he was killed by Grievous because he tried to to beat him.
Yeah. His heart was in the right place, but he tried to match Grievous' power with his own.
And Yoda said something to the effect of like, and I'm gonna butcher because I don't have it right, but he essentially tells him like, well, it sucks, but like he should have been better, like he could have, and it's very cold, very doesn't feel like, hey, one of our brothers just died. It's like, that idiot, he should have thought better,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he says that's tragic. He does end with the like, says like, there's this war, like there's danger in losing who we are. He definitely foreshadows the like, what is this war gonna do to us? The Jedi Order do to this, but it within that, the irony is he's still being very cold and callous to the point that Nadar lost. So Kit Fisto escapes, which is great scene. Got a great duel on the top there. He holds the 2 lightsabers out, and one's going each way, and
so awesome. Sam, give me your closing thoughts on this episode, and maybe even this arc as well too. We've been talking for a while. I'm curious for you, closing thoughts on this arc, on this episode.
My closing thoughts are, I never even had thought of it as an arc, but it very much is.
Yeah.
You're right that it is the Gunray arc, but he's a player only for, I don't know, 30% of it.
Yeah.
40% of it. He's barely even in this one. You just see the hologram of him.
Right.
But it very much is, it just shows that, I guess, irony, maybe dichotomy, I don't know, of the Jedi's views and what they think they are and what they want to be and what they actually are doing in reality and how they're trying to go about things, and just the discord within themselves and their order that they don't even see yet. So maybe not as much in Bombad Jedi, but in the following ones, just the like, we want this result, we want to do it this way, but we do it this way. Right. And our younglings don't even understand, and we're just cold to that and think, well, this is on them for not following the Jedi way. Yeah. But not kind of owning the fact that you caused that and you've subjected them to this war. And yeah, I mean, again, there's some filler in there, but they're not filler episodes, to be sure. I think they add a lot to characters that don't get a lot of movie time. I think this first season does a good job with that, just in general, which I enjoy. And I think it's a good one.
Yep. I completely agree. That'd be my closing thoughts for this as well, Sam, is that I feel like this show does a pretty good job. It happens every once in a while, but I feel like filler episodes are subjective, right? So like what you find as filler, I think there are some people that would say, well, like, really, is the escape of Nute Gunray like really necessary to the story? Like, really, by the end of this episode, nothing, or by the end of this arc, there's not been a ton like on paper that's actually changed, right? But I would say for the most part, this is definitely not filler, definitely not throwaway. And if anything, just continues to build character development for the Jedi as a whole, for the Sith as a whole, for the Separatists and for the Republic, as you see, these kind of high level ideas, permeated throughout. So
you can sum that up with Ahsoka right at the beginning of the episode. She messages Kit Fisto and says, "Happy hunting."
Happy hunting.
As ironic as you can get.
There you go. As ironic as you can get. Well, Sam, hey, listen, I've had so much fun getting to talk this arc. Always great when we can jump on and talk Clone Wars Chronicles. Thank you so much for, taking a little bit of your Sunday afternoon to jump on and do this. And a huge thank you to everyone who's listening, who's made it this far, who's a part of the Rule of the Galaxy family. We love you guys. And it's just so fun to, be a part of the larger expanded family with you. And so, again, if you don't follow us already, go follow us on Twitter at rulethegalaxysw. You can follow us on Facebook, on YouTube. Just search Rule the Galaxy SW. Email us at rulethegalaxysw@gmail.com. Sam, you're on Twitter now.
I am. You can follow me at Chopper Base. It's just one word, Chopper Base. No caps, no spaces, no nothing. Easy peasy. Surprised it wasn't taken yet.
Sam would love some tweets back and forth.
I would. Tweet at me if you're sad that we skipped Downfall of a Droid. I got a lot of thoughts on Downfall of a Droid.
We can still come back. And resurrect it. But hey, friends, we love you. Thanks for tuning in. Until next time, may the Force be with you.